right to still use explicit violence in your writings?
It's what I do, is one answer. I write horror fiction. There is a kind of curiosity that we have as human beings about our life processes. One of our last life processes is death. It's a legitimate subject for curiosity. We shouldn't be ashamed that the macabre or the morbid exercises some fascination upon us. I tell it like it is. If it's there in my mind's eye, I put it on the page. And that seems to me to be a legitimate way to write.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for the 4th episode of the Written and Read podcast. That is the Horror Reader and Writers podcast. As we stated earlier, the hosts of the show are going through these first 4 episodes, and we're each of the 4 hosts are telling you about a book that really impacted us, and then we're also doing a group interview with one person per episode. So on prior episodes, you can go back and listen to the first 3 if you haven't already to hear the books that impacted us in our interviews. But let's introduce those on the podcast. I am Splatterpunk Award-nominated author Aaron Beauregard, author of such monstrosities as The Slob, Scary Bastard, Yellow, and The Wedding Day Massacre, which is my newest book. And we're also joined by Carver Pike.
What's going on, everybody? I'm Carver Pike, also a Splatterpunk Award-nominated author of books like Slaughterbox. I've written Scalp, my parasitic head lice story, the Diablo Snuff books, and a handful of others.
And Daniel J. Volpe.
Hey everyone, Daniel Volpe here. I am the author of Billy Silver, and my newest book is Awakened in Blood.
And then we have also Rowland Bercy Jr.
Hey everybody, Rowland Bercy, author of Payback as a Witch, Pre-Thanksgiving Stress Disorder, and Unbortion. Nice to be here.
Dope. So that's who you have representing on the podcast today and for the foreseeable future. But as we continue to roll onward, we will be bringing on various special guests, such as different horror authors, small presses, and bloggers of the horror nature that kind of promote the craft. And as you know, also, like, this is the introductory episode, so just to remind everyone, moving forward, we're going to be, propping up different books from the horror community that you may or may not be aware of, so that you can kind of get a bird's eye view into the extreme horror and splatterpunk genre. And then we will also be providing different writing advice so that you don't have to make the same mistakes that we did. And we'll be discussing everything from editing books to writing out concepts, social media, marketing, formatting, literally anything you can think of. It's going to be covered on the Written and Read podcast. And if you have questions, we implore you to go ahead and send them. This is free advice from 4 losers and potentially other people.
Yeah.
And you can send those to writtenandreadpodcast@gmail.com. We don't claim to know everything, but we know a decent amount. I think between all of us, we've got to have released over 20 books, probably more. I think, Carver, you've done like 13 just under your horror pen name. I've done like 9. Roland's got at least 3. And Daniel's got a couple with a bunch that are just ready to come out. So,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that we could talk to you guys about. But if you want to hear all that stuff, make sure you go ahead and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify right now. The podcast is available for subscription there. If you listen on Stitcher or Google, it's going to go to those channels in the upcoming weeks, and we'll announce that very soon. But also YouTube, if you want to see just the dynamic of 4 sensual males clustered together in a square of seduction, then you can definitely go on YouTube and lick
Free
your...
human centipede.
Yes.
Yeah.
I get to be the front. It's like calling shotgun.
God damn it.
Who's gonna be in the back?
Oh,
Daniel.
man.
Yeah, we should have Roland be the front though, because he's oldest, so his stool's gonna be the softest, so it should be nice.
Yo, I love
That's
that.
disgusting.
man.
That's disgusting, Roland.
That is disgusting.
Wretched.
I have IBS, so y'all are all fucked.
Yeah.
Oh,
Gotta wear a snorkel.
Now listen, being splatterpunk authors, we could talk about bowel movement for close to an hour, but we don't plan to bore you with that. We're going to move on to the show, and boy, do we have an interesting finale for you. Today, we're going to learn about Rowland Bercy Jr.'s favorite book and cap it off. Well, no, I'm sorry, not favorite book, but the book that influenced him the most moving into the writing field, and then we're going to cap it off with a Carver Pike interview. And next week, or next episode, we should say, that's when we're really diving into the show itself. And then you'll fully know all of us by that point. So, Roland, the floor is yours, my friend. We are very interested to see what book you have selected, what has molded the depraved mind of the diarrhea-inducing IBS machine that is Rowland Bercy Jr.
Oh, let's see.
Disgusting.
I think somebody said it. There's so many books to choose from. I was torn between Wrath, James White. It's just there's a million. I can go on and on with the list, but I think the book that started me is Master of Lies by Graham Masterson.
Ooh, nice hardcover.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. Oh, and I stole it from the library.
Oh man.
Oh shoot! I'm in trouble now.
It's gonna cost you like at least 30 cents a couple years from now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I picked that book because that's one of the first books I read that had components of extreme horror in it for me. Like chapter 1, and I can still remember it so vividly, is I'm not going to give it away for anybody who ever read it or wants to read it, but like there's a killer, and I think he's trying to bring back Satan. And so he's breaks into this family's house, gets the kids, nails them to the wall with a nail gun in front of the parents, douses them with gasoline, sets them on fire. And I read it, and in the past I started off with actually science fiction and fantasy, reading the Dungeons and Dragons Choose Your Own Adventure books, and then going on to Pierce Anthony, the Xanth series. Then I started getting into horror because my mom used to leave the true crime books hanging around, and I would pick them up and read them. But that's one of the first books I read, and I was like, what the fuck did I just read? and I was hooked. I was hooked ever since. And I pretty much read all of his stuff. Once I got more into the extreme category, I started reading people like Wrath, James White and Matt Shaw, and I can think of a million, but you know how it is when you get put on the spot, you can't think of anything. But yeah, that's my book. That's my pick.
Roland, I think like it's interesting, right? Because and I don't know if you agree with this, but I feel like there's like two types of people. There's like someone who reads this extreme book and it just like beats the shit out of them, and like they're like, oh man, this is fucked up. Like I can never read something like this again. And then there's the other person that's like, yeah, this is like I never knew this was a thing, right?
Yeah.
And
like
we're
orgies and vineyards.
Yeah, and we're all like going like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, that was me. It's awesome.
I like Graham Masterson, but I've yet to read his books. I did pick up a copy of The House That Jack Built at the used bookstore, Mary's Books in Warwick, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
The film I had understood created quite a stir at the festivals, causing walkouts. I believe because of the family murder scene on the shooting range. Has anyone seen that movie?
I have not seen it, but now that you mention it, I'm gonna go see if I can find it.
Is that on Shudder? I feel like I've seen that recently, like on streaming, just flipping through movies. It might be on Shudder.
It might be, or it might be on Prime. I'm not sure, but it's free on one of those. But I implore you to go ahead and say fuck the stream and buy the Blu-ray uncut. That way you can see the full details of the family murder scene.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't believe that they actually include it on those. I mean, I could be wrong, but I believe that if you buy the Blu-ray, it will be a sure thing, and you will see those extra gory details. If you're a true sick fuck, that's the route to take.
Graham Masterson actually just did an interview on Bloody Goodreads. I think it's Bloody Goodreads, the podcast with Mark Goddard, and I didn't realize that he did a lot of like erotica stuff. Like, he did a lot of like very explicit like Penthouse stuff, and I think he used to write for either Penthouse or Hustler. I don't quote me on them, but I remember listening to the interview with Mark Goddard, and it was pretty intense with him. So if check that out. Definitely a great podcast
Mark
for
Goddard,
readers.
why does that sound familiar? I just can't place it though.
He's probably friends with all of us online. Super nice guy. I'm actually going to be on that show shortly. But he is Bloody Goodreads and Snakebite Horrorcast. He also does.
Oh, okay.
But I only know of Bloody Goodreads, and it's a really good show. So their premise is they interview an author, and then throughout the interview, the author will go through one of their Bloody Goodreads, and they pick 3 books throughout the show, and they talk about those pretty much like we're doing now. They talk about how those books influenced them, and why they really enjoyed those books. It doesn't have to be horror; it can be anything. But he had an interview recently. I think he's actually on Spotify, so you should be able to find it pretty easily on there. But definitely check that show out. It's a great show.
That's awesome. I think that's actually another topic that we could bring up in future episodes too. Is the importance of interacting with podcast platforms. That's the new wave, right? And as independent authors, and even a lot of non-independent authors, they're expected to promote their own material. You know what I mean? For at least like 80-70% of the workload is on them. Podcast is a great outlet. You get reaches to different audiences. Even if you're giving up an hour of your time, even if that podcast is only reaching like 100 people, you might have a couple that pick up, and then from there, they go ahead and share it with others, right? And it's like a disease. It's a sickness that we give them. But
yeah, they're definitely
it's like
they're definitely a great platform, because the first one I did a Quiet Place on YouTube with Regina and Jeremy Maddox, and that was great. And from there, that's where I met Frank Edler from Bazong, which 3 out of 4 of us have been on there, and Roland's out to pick up the slack here.
Yeah, Roland, you gotta get on there, dude. You'd have fun. He's cool.
Carver, did you do that one yet or no? Did you do Bazong?
No, I haven't done it yet.
No, right, never mind. It's just me and Aaron. But anyway,
well, you should both
it's
do
a really
it.
good show.
Yeah, you should both
do
it.
Oh yeah.
You would have a great time.
Frank is a super laid back Roland. Even though you have IBS and you're just blowing out all the time, like you'll be fine on there. Trust me. Put on a diaper. Just go for it.
I have one up now.
Roland,
Frank.
Have you? I'm sorry. I just gotta interrupt real quick. Have you ever heard of the website RateMyPoo.com?
No.
My poo.
Yeah.
So it's
might be the king.
It's a website where you could upload a picture of your excrement, and then others will rate it. They'll be like, "Oh, this is a 3-star turd for me," or "This is a 4-star," and then you'll see all different types. Solidified, the mush,
Particles.
It could be everything, but I think the downfall of the website happened when the auto-censored toilets began, because everyone would get up to snap a picture and it would suck it down automatically before you get the picture. Before you know it, the website's gone.
Yeah.
Damn it.
Roland, you could be a king.
All right.
So that's a larger conversation. That's more political, honestly. So we won't get into that too much.
No politics. But anyway, you guys should definitely reach out to Frank Edler from Bazong. Great guy, awesome. He's a really good author as well. So he's definitely laid back to to have an interview with. I think I ended up talking to him for like almost an hour after my interview was over. So check him out and definitely check out his show. He's got some really good content on there.
Yeah, I would call him a true professional.
He is very nice.
Yeah, I listen to the show. I like it a lot. So I've been listening to it a lot when I'm in the car. So
Cool. I think like with Masterton, going back to him, I think just the fact that he was able to, it was somebody that I read who was just like, I don't give a fuck. I'm going to write what I want to write. It's going to be what it is. And if you don't like it, don't read it. And so I think that's what actually drew me to him, or, you know, I was inspired by that. I was like, if he can write shit like that and talk about kids getting nailed to the wall and set on fire, what the fuck?
Why can't I?
Exactly.
exactly.
It's just weird. Like for me, I don't know. I just find that some people just are not able to separate it, and maybe it's because they've had a horrific experience in real life. I guess I could see that, but I don't know. It's weird. Like you get, like we were talking about triggers on the other episodes, and you'll get one person that's like, "Oh man, like anything with animals, fuck that. I'm deducting a star automatically," kind of, or some people it's children, and it's just like, I don't know, man. Like to me, I must be a cold-hearted motherfucker because I love all that shit.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I don't know
At the end of the day, it's fiction.
That's what I'm saying. It's fiction. Like you should. I guess just some people are not able to separate it, and you get so enveloped in the story. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I haven't read anything that's turned me off. I can say that I don't necessarily like reading books where there's no story, where it's just gore and disgusting, wild craziness, wild abandon just for the sake of being gory and crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it still needs to be some kind of story. Like, I can't just, because I have kind of put books down where I'm just like, I don't really see where this is going. It's just nasty for the sake of being nasty. You know what I mean? Like, there has to still be at least some kind of story to it.
Yeah.
For me, anyways. That's just my opinion. But
I think you're in the majority. You know, would you say, Daniel? I feel like we've kind of broached this, and it's like, what's like there is a genre, and I guess you might call it bizarro in a way sometimes, right? Because bizarro will sometimes not have a true storyline, and that's cool. Like, and I said this on the Bazoncast. I was like, I think that stuff's like awesome too. And like, I have a book, Hallucinations, that's highly based off of like drug trips and shit, and it's like the closest thing to bizarro I've done, I feel like. But for the most part, I feel like that grounded story connects with the reader more. And you know, bizarro is even more of a niche than extreme horror, in my opinion, because you could still get a lot of emotions out of extreme horror. Whereas bizarre, you can get it, but you'd have to be real crafty in a world where anything can happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're going to talk, I still have to talk about, you know, how I started writing and stuff. So this is going to come up in a second too. But it's the same thing with when I was writing like erotic romance and that kind of stuff. Like I had a hard time calling my stuff erotica because technically erotica is where there's more sex than there is story. I mean, you're reading it because it's kind of like the written version of porn. You know what I mean?
So you're holding the book with one hand?
Called the plumber for sex. You know what I mean? There's no reason. Yeah. Whereas the romance side of things could have very graphic sex in it. Like my stuff was very graphic sex, but there was always some kind of story to it. There wasn't just bam, like you just walk in the door and there's just sex through the entire book and then it's over. So that's kind of the same thing for me with horror. Like basically what we're saying though. So like there's stuff out there. There's that dino porn shit with like people are into like the women having sex with Tyrannosaurus Rex and octopuses and shit like that. I mean,
there's videos of that though. You can see that.
Like rodents?
Like the hentai.
No, not
shit,
dinosaurs.
Oh, I love.
like the dino porn stuff. It was like really popular, man. That's its own popular, little niche there.
Yeah,
but
it's
I don't imagine you're going to get a whole lot of story out of that. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a story why Tyrannosaurus Rex.
And here come the hate emails from the dinos. You motherfucker! I give you 3,000 words on T-Rex Bone in a Cave.
Written in Red
If I'm not here
Podcast at
next week, it's 'cause
gmail.com.
they've kicked me off for pissing off all the dino porn people.
Hey,
But,
man,
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's cool though. Like if you could pull it off, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But then again, if you're catering to that, like if that's your shit, you know what I mean. I don't knock it. You know, like if that's your shit, we're joking about it, but I know what you're saying too. You're like, I don't knock it. It's just not my shit. You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't shit on anybody's kink, any kind of kink. I mean, that's your thing, your kink. But for me writing, I just feel like I need to have some kind of story there, you know, which is where I always struggle with the erotic stuff because I hated seeing my shit called erotic, and I even went with it for a while and said I was an erotic author and stuff, but it would piss me off, you know, because my books were being thrown into the erotic slush pile on Amazon, and I had like a legitimate story in there, so at some point
it happens in horror too, though. To your point, like some of my shit get fucking labeled erotica that is not. It's no way near it, dude. Like it has nothing to do with like my books. Sex is usually pretty minimal, honestly, in my books. Like in my 9 books, it's probably, you know, a handful of scenes or something like that. So I don't fucking understand how they could relabel you like that, and that's a problem. Like you said, the slush pile, right? And we'll talk about this on the show. This is another good. I like that we keep pointing out these things that we're going to talk about because they're super relevant. It's like if you get thrown into that slush pile, no one's going to see your shit. Your visibility goes down into the toilet with the slush pile.
Well, that's where I made the mistake at first because I had never heard of extreme horror. So I labeled myself coming from the erotic world. I called it erotic horror, which was a huge fucking mistake because it's still horror. Hell, Friday the 13th is fucking erotic horror. How many sex scenes happen in Friday the 13th? But they don't call it erotic horror. I mean, people are fucking in tents and campers and cabins and all over the damn, fucking in the woods, just everywhere. Sex everywhere. But they don't call Friday the 13th erotic horror. You know what I mean? I made the mistake of saying, yeah, I write erotic horror because I thought it was the responsible thing to do. I was worried about. I knew I started reading horror at such a young age. I was afraid that like 12-year-olds were going to start picking up my stuff with graphic sex in it. So I thought, you know, the responsible thing to do was I would call it erotic horror. And it was a fucking mistake because it took me a long time to get out of that erotic slush pile. So I will never use that word again for my book.
Yeah, I think it's weird too. It's like as authors, right? We are asked to categorize our books when really the categorization of the book should be coming from the readers, you know? Yeah. In my opinion anyway. I think yeah, sure, I say my stuff's extreme only because like I know people could be offended by it. If that's the definition of extreme horror or splatterpunk horror, then certainly I am. And I think I don't know. I just think it's a tough position to be put in when you're there checking boxes on the genre of what you're supposed to be in. Like to me, Yellow, like I said, is like that's definitely a crime book too. It's not just horror; it's horror crime, pretty much equally. But I guess it's for the readers to decide. But you have to decide for yourself now. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's really tough. I'm sure we'll go into this a lot more too. But now that I am putting my stuff wide as I go to Barnes and Noble and Kobo and these other sites, picking the genres for my books is a pain in the ass, man, because horror really doesn't get, it's crazy. There's like 20 different horror graphic novel subgenres, but like 5 horror subgenres. It's like you're either supernatural, you're, I can't even remember what they give you. There's not even like a zombie one. You would think there would be a specific zombie category.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's like you're saying, it's really hard to break your stuff down and figure out which small, category to place it in.
I never really thought of abortion as bizarro. I don't know why. I guess I should have. But until somebody said it, but they thought it was crazy bizarro. And I was like, oh, I thought it was just horror.
I think Roland, like someone could interpret it as bizarro, but I interpret it as just horror personally.
Yeah,
because to me, bizarro is like nothing in the actual world makes sense.
Yeah.
In your story, there's this one unbelievable thing that's happening, right?
Yeah.
But the whole plane and stratosphere isn't unbelievable, right?
Yeah. That's
Everything
true, yeah.
else is normal. So,
Yeah.
but to me, like, okay, like a bizarro is like, it has to be wide, the whole thing. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like most any horror story you pick up has something that is completely unbelievable in it.
Some
You
element
know?
of it. Yeah.
True.
I took it as a huge compliment. I was like, oh shit, I wrote a Bizarro novella. I was happy.
You're like, yo, you call it what the fuck you want, boy, as long as you're buying it. You know, like.
Yeah.
Just read it.
Run
And
them
leave me a
pockets.
review. Leave a damn review, please.
Yeah. Always leave reviews.
Yes.
That is big.
So what the fuck were we
Wow.
talking about, though?
Well, we're
Graham
talking about-
Oh,
Masterson.
Graham Masterson.
But
that
then we
motherfucker.
segued into Carver,
supposed
and I
to
think
be
we should
Graham
just continue with Carver now. We should ask Carver all kinds of shit. So,
Yeah, I guess, okay, so we thank you, Roland, for bringing up Graham Masterson's, is it Master of Lies was the book, right?
yes, Master of Lies by Graham Masterson.
You guys want to see some children die? Fucking get it done. He's not afraid
Nail
to kill
guns.
the kiddies. My boy. But I guess we could segue now into the final segment of our initial 4-episode launch, which is going to be the interview with Carver Pike. Let's let Rowland Bercy Jr. ask the first question.
Oh, let's see. You put me on the spot. All right, Carver. So your newest novel, what is it? Scalp, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. What was the driving motivation behind writing that?
I had just read Darcy Coates' Parasite, and I don't know, Parasites scare the shit out of me, man. That's like the one, I don't know, we were talking once before about things that scare us and how like demons and shit like that kind of seem to touch most of us, but for some reason, just the idea of parasites, like something you could drink or something that just gets into your body and takes over, not necessarily zombies, but you know what I mean? Like that little microscopic thing that can get into you and take over your body kind of thing. So I was just trying to think of how I could do that differently.
Yeah.
And I might have gone a little too far with it because it's funny, even extreme horror enthusiasts don't seem to want to read Scalp. Like nobody wants anything to do with head lice. So every time I put the picture up, all the comments are about how they can't read it because it's making their head itch. They don't, they dealt with head lice for 10 fucking years for their kid. They've shaved off all their children's hair. They shaved off their own hair. They want nothing to do with this, with, the head scratching and all this shit because the cover's pretty sick. It's just head lice on a scalp.
I love it.
And so that's, I was just thinking, like, I actually did have to shave my nephew's hair because he had head lice. And I was thinking, what scares people? What's a cool way for, parasite type of thing to get into your body? And I thought it'd be pretty badass to have these things that just drill through your fucking skull and just get into your brain and take over your body, basically. So
Yeah. Awesome.
That's awesome,
that's
dude.
kind of,
It's cool how it the like so many of our own stories, I feel like how that real life aspect plays into it. You know what I mean? And I don't know if did you ever see the show The Monsters Inside Me?
Man, I was
no,
gonna.
and I don't want to because I told you I don't. People keep telling me I need to see that, and it's like I want to see it, but I'm kind of scared to see it.
It's absolutely terrifying. Roland, what did you see on it?
No, I'm a Carver. I'm not. I can't do it.
I'm afraid if I see it, then I won't want to do or touch or eat anything.
Like I could read about it all day long. I could read about any kind of thing happening, but when it's actually on TV live happening to a real person, I'm like, yeah, I can't fuck with that. It's too much for me.
Grab a copy of Scalp now that I think about it, since we do have the YouTube version. But for anybody who hasn't seen it, I'm gonna try to hold it. You see the little head lice?
Oh man.
Yes. I love that cover. I love it.
Yeah, it's so it's fucking gross. There's little nits in there and stuff in there, just disgusting.
Yeah.
I thought, what's better than putting them up against high school kids at a leadership conference, in a small town in West Virginia. So
there's been so many good books. There's been so many good books written about parasites and stuff like that. Like Ed Lee has Slither, Nick Cutter has The Troop, And one of our own, I guess I can call her, on our Splatter Club page, C. Commissar. This is probably how you say her name.
Oh yeah.
I think she has a book called Pumpkins for Cheap. It's short. I think it's maybe like a novella or a novelette. Similar. It's about not lice, but it's like parasitic. These like brain controlling creatures that live in pumpkins, and it's a Halloween story. It's
Nice.
pretty cool.
It sounds
She's
cool.
also a great author. Yeah, check it out. So I think it's called Pumpkins
I
for Cheap.
read Nick Cutter's The Troop, and I liked that one a lot too.
That was really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, he's awesome, and definitely I love The Deep. The Deep's probably one of my top 3 horror novels. I love it.
Really?
I haven't read
it's-
that. I only read The Troop, so
The
That's
Deep
wonderful.
is one of those books that makes me like physically uncomfortable. Like I read that and I was like really like just it's very claustrophobic, that book. It's excellent.
I could add that to my list. Man.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
I was every time I see your cover, I don't know if you guys saw this movie called Ticks.
I've
I
seen
haven't
That's It,
seen it, no.
the TV show.
Yeah. I saw that. No, but this is about like freaking huge ticks that was attacking people, and so.
Oh, is that the one with the guy from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Carlton?
Yes, sure is.
Yeah,
You
that's a
got-
classic, dude.
we do have a lot of
I love that shit.
What's his name?
Well,
Something
also-
Ribeiro, right?
Alfonso.
Alfonso Ribeiro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy because I live in New England, and man, ticks are the fucking real deal over here, dude. Like, I mean, you could go out into the woods and come back, and you have a fucking deer tick the size of a pinhead on you. You know what I mean? Like, it's a crazy thing. And like living in New England, at some point, everybody's reached back and scratched their back after a long day out in the woods or something. And I remember being a kid and I fucking pinched down on my back and I was like, I thought it was like a zit or something. And I was like, ugh, what the fuck is this? And I pinched down on it and I pulled forward and it was my fucking hand covered in blood and a fucking tick squirming in my hand, like a fat one. But those aren't the ones you got to worry about. It's the little ones, the deer ticks.
Yeah.
And Daniel knows because he's a hunter. But the deer ticks, they'll fucking get inside you. You pull them out, and their head stays there, and then it grows back. It's a fucking nightmare, man.
They're absolutely disgusting. And like you said, talking about being covered in them, in where I live in the New England area, like during it's still fairly warm in October. And you walk through the woods and you get to your spot, your tree stand, and you're literally like crawling with ticks. So you got to have a lint roller with you to get them all off you. But and even after you shoot a deer, you go down to gut them and they're just fucking bloated ticks on them, or they're crawling up your hands as you're trying to cut the deer open. So it's definitely the parasites. With that picture of scalp that you have, that cover, like Aaron said, that is a freaking very powerful cover, and it's very basic and minimalistic, I'd say, but it's just that disgusting feeling because we've all had those creepy crawlies on us, and
Apparently it's backfired because, like I said, instead of people going like, "Oh, that's an awesome cover, I want to buy it," they're going like, "Oh, I'm not reading that. It's head lice."
Carver, I know you do romance, right? And erotica.
Well, kind of. I started out writing dark fantasy, actually, which is my Edge of Reflection series that I have out under Carver Pike right now. I have 4 books out in that series, and I'm planning a few others in that series still. So I was writing that, and you remember at one point Amazon had a site that was kind of like Wattpad. I think Amazon was just trying to go to battle with Wattpad because they had something super similar, and I was actually picked to be like a beta tester or whatever for it.
Mm-hmm.
But you basically put your work up for free and people could read it and give you thoughts on it and stuff like that. So I'd put the Edge of Reflection, like the first book, up there, and a young adult author who I'm really good friends with now, she read it and she dug it, and she said that she thought that I should give, it's funny that she was a young adult author, but she thought I should give erotica a try. That my style and everything would lean towards erotica, would be good there. So we kind of made a deal. I said, you try horror, I'll try erotica. I'd made a joke about I was going to write a story about a girl that gets fucked on a Ferris wheel. It was just like a joke. And that turned out to be my first Maybe Mandy story under the name Chris Genovese. And I wrote a trilogy of these stories. It was just from a female point of view, kind of diary entry style. But I really wanted to be back in horror, like in dark fantasy and stuff like that. I was kind of writing erotica because I knew that's where the money was at, and I thought I could do it well. And so I wrote a bunch of books under Chris Genovese. But like I said earlier, like I kind of got stuck in that erotica thing where I wanted to write more meaningful stories and even stories that had graphic sex in them. All my erotica still had some, like there's a book called Welcome to E. Mayberry under Chris Genovese that's my wildest book ever. And it's about a swinger community. It's crazy. It's got tons of sex in it, but it also does have a story, and it has kind of a dark side to it. I think a lot of Carver Pike readers would actually dig it. But from there, I got so tired of the erotica stuff, I started writing horror again, but I was doing it under Chris Genovese's name, and I was like making a mistake of trying to mix the genres, and it just didn't work for me. I mean, people who are reading horror, they don't want to go look at my catalog and see all these fluffy, funny book covers and stuff like that. And then likewise, people who are there to read erotica, they don't want to come across horror books, and they don't really. Some people mix genres, but not typically. It seems like, your romance readers want romance, horror wants horror. So I started putting horror books out as Chris Genovese. It wasn't working. They were getting thrown into erotica too. And I said, I got to do something about this. I really want to take horror seriously. I really don't want to focus on erotica anymore. So I created the Carver Pike pen name and started writing horror under Carver Pike. And then, so now I don't really write erotica anymore. I have those books still out under Chris Genovese. I created a middle pen name called CM Genovese. And that is more like mafia, kind of Sons of Anarchy type of stuff, just brutal, violent, kind of a middle ground, because there is very graphic sex in it, but it's really violent and raw and just like gang related stuff. It's going to have organized crime. I still go back and forth to that pen name in Carver Pike because it's, I like writing that stuff. I actually have a lot of, like, there's a religious cult in my biker series that's, you can definitely tell there's some Carver Pike influence in there because it's a sick ass, like, religious cult is the bad guy in those books. And so that's where I'm at now. So I kind of go back and forth between just the horror and this, I call it romantic suspense, but there's really way more suspense and violence than romance in it. So that's where I kind of juggle those back and forth now.
Okay. I have a question for you, because this always interests me when I talk to other authors, and I asked Roland this as well. What is your, when you're ready to write, what's your style? Like, what's your daily writing habits, I guess? Because you're pretty prolific. Like, you seem like you put out a lot of shit. I mean, you have 3 pen names and you have a lot of books in each of them. So when you're ready to sit down and write, is it like are you an early morning writer? Are you an afternoon writer or nighttime? Or run me through a day of what you would do for writing a story.
I tend to write better at night. Honest answer. I just can't write at night a lot of times because I'm just too damn tired. So when I'm wired and I'm wide awake, I do my best writing, I think, at night. But my typical day is just to get up. I'm lucky that at this point I'm only working part-time. I do have a part-time gig that I do. Yeah. So the rest of the time is spent writing. I get up first thing in the morning, get breakfast, drink some coffee, and just sit down and try to get to writing. When I'm not busy doing all the, as you guys know, there's so much else that goes into it, man. All the marketing parts of it and the social media side to it and stuff. And
it's so easy to get distracted, dude. Like, it's crazy.
Best advice, and I don't even take it myself, is to just not open anything but Word. Just open up Word. Don't even look at your phone and just write. But it's almost impossible to do. So
I think I've done that probably 0 times in my writing career. Like, I never do that. I always have like Facebook or Gmail or something open, and I'm sure like you guys as well. We get a lot of emails, and you wake up in the morning and you have like a handful of private messages and stuff. So you're sitting to answer them, and then you're like, did I get any reviews? Did I make any sales? Or do I have to book this show or podcast? Or moving right along. So it's definitely, I can't wait for us to talk about like the marketing episode, because that might be like a fucking 2-parter, because that is That's the hardest part of this.
Hell, I need to learn from the marketing episode, but to answer your question about the daily routine, like and we'll talk more about this later and stuff, but one piece of advice I always give to the newer writers and stuff is just give yourself some kind of word count that you would like to hit every day. And if you're able to write past that, great, write past that. But don't feel guilty if you can't. You know what I mean? Things happen and stuff like that. But try to pick a realistic goal. Like for me, I would say an average is I can hit 3,000 words in a day pretty easily for me. I've hit 13,000 words in a day when I'm sitting there and just focused and I'm like really into the story and like nothing moves me. I'll have a fucking migraine at the end of the day because I'm like a zombie by the time I get there. I mean, seriously, my head hurts and everything when I do that, and it doesn't happen that often, but I'm way more likely to hit 2,000 to 3,000 words a day. So if I hit 3,000 words a day and then I have to do some other stuff, I don't feel as guilty about it at the end of the day or that evening. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
And if you do, like I've said this in blog posts and stuff like that, I mean, it's just basic math. I mean, if you can do some words every single day, they're going to end up being a book at the end. You know what I mean? Yeah. It might take you 3 months, 4 months, a year. But if you don't write, you'll never write that book. If you do at least some words every day, it's going to add up to whatever page count you're hitting, so word count.
Now, this is kind of a question for everyone, I guess, because we really haven't discussed this too much. I'll start with Carver, though. Are you more of a pantser or are you a planner? Do you outline stuff or do you pants it or do you kind of do a little bit of both or what do you do?
I always was a pantser until recently. I don't sit down and write like a physical outline on the side, but what I've learned to do is I'll go ahead and put my chapter headers first. So I'll know that a novel for me is about 33 chapters, something like that. I'll probably put about 30 chapters, lay them out like that. And then I try to go through, and what I do is in all caps, I'll put what I want to happen in every chapter. So it's basically an outline now. But I just started doing that recently, and the only reason I did was because I started writing those biker books I was telling you about, and those are 3 points of view. And if I didn't do that, it's almost impossible to go by the seat of your pants when you're doing 3 points of view that all have to meet up at the end. You know what I mean? Like if you don't plan it, it'll just be a fucking mess. So I do that, but I'm not always able to do that. I don't know where the end, I don't know the end of most of my books. So I do it to the best of my ability and then kind of just write.
Aaron, what about you? What do you kind of do?
For me, it's like mostly just my prime writing time, I'll say though, is like if I can get a fucking like a morning that it's raining, damn, that shit just does it for me for some reason. I don't know why. Yeah. If I have the time to write during the morning when it's like very gloomy out, for some reason that is just like the best time for me to write. But I mean, I don't have a set goal daily. I just try, like Carver was saying, there's like 1,000 things to do. Like today, I was literally like packing shipping containers all day for books. It's like, sure, would I like to work on Son of the Slob? Of course. But there was literally no time for it, and now we're doing this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like...
Yeah, I was out driving around all day, so I know exactly.
Yeah, you don't know what exactly might come, or if there's a conversation you have with, a podcast or a publisher. But I do like writing late night, like you said. Like when I have the energy, if I can get like a good 2-3 hours in around 11, man, usually some fucking dark shit comes out around then.
Yeah.
So.
How about you, Roland?
I don't really plan anything out, but I love what Carver said as far as setting up like giving yourself a word count a day, and then also doing the chapters, putting what you want in each chapter. I never thought about that. Me, I do most of my writing while I'm at work. They don't expect me to actually work while I'm there.
Hopefully your boss ain't listening to this.
Don't promote it to your work.
Edit that out.
But no, like I sit there at work and between patients, I'll have ideas coming to me all night. Sometimes I do it like I think a lot before I'm going to sleep, which I'm sure everybody does. and I'm like, oh shit, that'd be good for the book. So I have a little thing next to my book, and I'll just jot down some ideas. So for me, I just write as I go. Yeah, I don't really have a set thing that I do.
I used to carry around a little spiral notebook like the detectives use, like the little ones you buy 3 for $1 and shit at the grocery store.
Yeah.
I used to have that because I used to have to wear a suit to work all the time. I'd have it in my suit pockets.
All right.
And I've written full like screenplays and shit just in those little books. Just
What do you do?
I write mainly in the morning. Like I'm a morning person, so I get up at 5 generally, and I'll sit down before work and I'll write for an hour and a half. I don't have a set word count I want to get to, but I have a set time limit. So I'm going to write for an hour and a half, and whatever I get done, I get done. Usually, if everything is flowing the right way, I'll knock out 2,000 words maybe. But just like you guys, like kind of when it's going. And on the weekends, I have a little office set up now. So on the weekends, maybe I'll sit downstairs and I'll hammer out some words. Like when I finished A Gift of Death, I think I wrote the final like 5,000, 6,000 words in one night. Like I couldn't stop. I had to get it done.
Yeah.
And but I do like the late night writing. So when I'm up late at night, like Aaron said, if that 11 p.m. is kind of the witching hour where I can sit there and the house is quiet, everybody's in bed, and it's just me and the keyboard, and I can kind of just have at it.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's fucking dope, dude. I find that to be the best time, like just when there's nothing going on, it's dead silent, and it is creepy usually at that time, somewhat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
especially in the Northeast too, when we got hit with a lot of snow this year, and for you guys that have never really experienced too much snow or a heavy accumulation of snow makes everything very, very quiet.
Yeah.
And there's no traffic, and any traffic that is moving it's almost like everything's on mute, and it's like Aaron says, a very eerie feeling. And with snow cover and stuff like that, especially when you have a couple feet, it's dead silent outside.
That's how it always is in West Virginia.
Yeah. Except for the banjo.
Even in the summer,
every now and then.
quiet here. Oh man.
Hey Carver, of all of your books that you've written, let's just say horror. Of all of your horror books that you've written, what was your favorite one to write?
My favorite of all would be The Grindhouse, which is the second book in my Diablo Snuff series. And my Diablo Snuff series, even though it's a series, they're all standalone books because they all revolve around this evil organization called Diablo Snuff. But each book is a totally different situation. So in the second one, it's about a horror author who goes to a writer's retreat, and he meets all these other authors from different genres, and there's crazy shit. I mean, there's an orgy scene on broken glass. It's just crazy, man. And most of that book came from a dream I had, a nightmare I had. I had no intention to write a sequel because The Foreign Evil, which is the first Diablo Snuff book, is like a novella, and it does kind of leave you hanging. It wasn't meant. It was kind of like one of those short stories that you'd probably see like in a collection or something like that. I wasn't planning to add a second story to it until I had that nightmare, man. And that nightmare was so fucking vivid. Like the guy that tried to hand me a newspaper in the dream, and a cockroach ran out of his sleeve and shit and all onto my arm and shit. And like parts of that book were just so vivid in the dream. I've never had a dream like that before. And so when I woke up, I just immediately grabbed like a notebook and started trying to jot down everything I could remember. And the book just felt like it wrote itself. And it's still one of my favorites of my books. And then Slaughterbox is probably number 2, which is the one that's nominated for the Splatterpunk Award. So, and that is in the Diablo Snuff world, but it involves a movie theater that's basically a torture chamber, a slaughter box. So this guy takes his girlfriend on a date, and they get trapped in this movie where things are coming out of the screen, and it's cool as shit, man. It's a lot of fun.
I have to say, I read Foreign Evil, and I really enjoyed it, and you can definitely tell the reading that book with the emotional investment the protagonist has when he's just going on about how much he's kind of crushing on this girl. And there are so many scenes in that book where you're like, dude, get the fuck out. Like, this is not worth it. Get the fuck out of here. And he keeps going. And it's almost like watching a scary movie where you're like, why are you going in the fucking woods? Like, get in the car and leave. And the whole time I'm reading the book, and I'm like, motherfucker, get out of there. You're in the wrong spot. And then he goes into the push button with this girl, and I'm like, you're fucked now. And then it just, I don't want to spoil it, but it progresses to a point. And I left a review on Amazon and Goodreads where I just did not see where it was going. The way you pulled it out at the end with just the twists in there was just well done. I definitely thought it was going in one direction, and you definitely flipped it on its head. So that was a great book, and I actually have Slaughterbox, which I have signed, and I can't wait to get into that one as well.
Oh, thank you, man. And I mentioned on I think it was a Necrocasticon, I talked a little bit about the For and Evil and the push buttons, and I've posted on Facebook and stuff about it, and that's real from in Panama. Those push buttons there, which for anybody who doesn't know, it's basically just a very quick explanation of it. You drive into this place, and it's just a series of garages. It looks kind of like like one of those storage facilities, the different garages. And you drive into one that's open. You park your car, and you push like a doorbell button that closes the garage behind you, and that signals the person inside that they have a customer. So they come to the door, and through a little mail slot in the door, they take your money. And then you go inside, and from there, it's basically a hotel room, but you never see the people. There's no personal interaction. So, a lot of people take their lovers and shit there, and when they're cheating on their spouses and stuff. And some of them have like mirrored ceilings or hot tubs and shit like that. And there's porn on the TV and shit. And these things are all over Panama. And
so it's Roland's bedroom, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
And they even have menus. Some of them have these menus. They're like Some of them actually have food. I would never order food from the fucking people.
Try the crab.
They also have like sex toys and shit on the menu. Like you could call up and say, I want a number 2 or whatever. It could be like a cheeseburger and a dildo. And they bring it to like the little slot in the wall. So again, you still never really see anybody. So I had gone to one of these with my ex, and I was just thinking, like, what would stop them from videotaping us and like us showing up on fucking Pornhub or something? Like there's who's regulating this
I have something to tell you, Carver. It's bad news. No.
Turn the screen around. Bounce.
I've been watching you for years.
Here we are.
But seriously, man. And then I started thinking along the lines of like Hostel and just the crazy shit that Hostel is another movie that to me just kind of freaked me out because
I love it.
That kind of horror gets to me. The horror that I believe probably really happens. You know what I mean? The kind of shit that I can imagine happening out there.
Yeah.
And so that's what kind of led to A For and Evil, was just this guy, as Daniel mentioned, meets this girl in Panama, takes her to one of these push buttons, and it just kind of all goes downhill from there. So.
Oh God, there's so many times in that book where I'm like, dude, go jerk off. Like it's not worth it. It's not worth it the whole time. And he does not, and it does not end well. But yeah, great book.
Awesome.
Highly recommend.
The Grindhouse is a full-length novel, and that's the sequel. And that's just, it's worse. There's a lot of crazy shit in that book. So yeah, that was a long answer to your question.
I love it.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, though. I think this has been a great 4th episode. Do you guys have any other questions before we cap it off? Or
I have one last one, and it's brief. Carver, what do you put in your hair? Because it's majestic.
I don't put anything in my hair, man.
That's a fucking lie. And
I swear to God,
I want to get Simon McCarty. Simon McCarty is going to back me up on this because he also loves your hair. Because him and I are both very bald men, and very jealous of your luxurious mane.
He put pictures of what's that cartoon? Is that Rin Tin Tin? Who was it that he was putting at the?
No, I don't know. Archie or something like that.
Yeah, some shit with the swoop in his hair. Yeah. Oh man.
One more question for Carver before we leave.
What's up?
Do you have anything you're working on right now? What's going on in the future?
Oh God, man. Yeah. A lot of stuff. The Maddening is coming up, which is technically the third book in the Diablo Snuff series, because Passion and Pain and Slaughterbox are kind of like side stories, like companion stories.
Mm-hmm.
So The Maddening is coming up, and that book is wild. It's like several stories in one, but it's just it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then Faces of Beth is another one that I'm working on. I've got Bone Bath Holler, which I'm working on. A lot of shit, man. I
Too
really
much to know.
Yeah, like I actually took a spiral notebook the other day, because for a while, I didn't really want to do short stories or novellas anymore. Like, I really wanted to focus on full-length novels. That's why I did Grad Night and Scalp, and Slaughterbox is a smaller, but it's still a full-length novel. But I'm noticing how, because I'd written novellas for a long time and they weren't selling so well at the time, but it seems like people, especially in horror now, are really getting into novellas again and short stories and stuff. So I was looking at all my ideas that I have in my files on the computer and trying to write down like what would actually constitute a full-length novel and what's more of a short story that I should run with and stuff. And there's a lot of work, man. I mean, thank God. I mean, I'm glad I'm not drying up with ideas. So
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff coming, but The Maddening should be next, and probably Faces of Beth will be after that.
That's great.
Thank you for
Awesome.
the question, man.
Yeah, of course.
Questions?
Yeah, great, insightful interview, Carver. So I want to thank Roland for the Graham Masterson book that inspired him, and Carver for answering all of our questions. This is the Written and Read podcast. We've gone ahead and sort of dissected each other, for lack of a better word.
Mm-hmm.
And, now we will be moving forward with the podcast to talk about promising authors and also writer's advice and whatever we can offer you guys in the upcoming weeks. So be sure to send emails to writtenandreadpodcast@gmail.com if you have any inquiries for us or for just writing in general. And then also be sure to subscribe to the show on Spotify or iTunes, and then it will go out to other channels later. But we also have the YouTube channel for Written and Read, so check that out. Of course, subscribe there if you like videos. So, lastly, as we wrap up, I'm Aaron Beauregard. You could find my horror writing at Amazon, Godless, or you could just straight up hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, whatever your preference is. If you have questions about the books, or if you have an interest in like a signed copy or something like that. I also do like magnets and bookmarks and shit like that too. So feel free to ask about that stuff. And then for Carver Pike, you can find him
at carverpike.com. I'm all over social media as Carver Pike. Paperbacks are on Amazon as well as ebooks, and I'm starting to roll them out wide. So you'll see them on godless.com and on Barnes & Noble and all the other sites. That's about it for me. Daniel?
I'm on social media sites. I'm on mainly Facebook. I have an Instagram as well. Facebook is Daniel Volpe, and then my author page is Daniel J. Volpe. Everything is pretty much on Amazon. All my paperbacks. Awakened in Blood. Actually, when this comes out, it'll probably be on Amazon as well. But for the time being, godless.com is where you can find Awakened in Blood. And Instagram is DJ Volpe Author. And I'm approachable, so hit me up, direct message, and if you want a signed book or just want to shoot the shit, let me know. I'm always available. Roland.
Hey. You can check out my website at www.rowlandbercyjr.com. You can find all of my books on Amazon, and then also Facebook. And send me a message anytime. Like you say, Daniel, I love talking to people and meeting new people. So please reach out if you ever want to say hi.
Awesome. So that marks the end of the 4th episode of the Written and Read podcast. Guys, get ready. We are going to be going full speed ahead with the independent horror community. We're going to be talking about some cool shit on our next episode, as well as, the writer's advice, which is, I'm really interested to start that, quite honestly. We already kind of wove it into some of the conversations, but we couldn't really expand upon it though because of the nature of the interviews. So, guys, be ready for that. Make sure you subscribe. You don't want to miss out. And again, until next time, keep it 100% horror.